There was a woman by the name of Emma Stephanie. Okay, she was going out with a man by the name of James Frizzell. It's believed that Emma took a gun, shot James right through the chest up on Monotongo Street and killed him. When she was brought in for questioning, she basically claimed that every person within Pottsville had done the deed except for herself. The police officers became very upset with this. And if you look, we have the courthouse right above, we have the jail right over here. They actually marched her right down this road, basically as a public spectacle, because they believed she was lying so often. Now the interesting thing is, on the sides of the streets, on the sidewalks, there were hundreds of people lined up to watch Emma make her walk. Emma actually walked down and she was socializing with people as she made the walk. In fact, it became national news. Suitors actually sent in letters asking for her hand of marriage. Within a year of Emma getting off, she did indeed get married to one of them. So it was a big deal. Now the interesting thing with this is, every time Emma was asked about James Frizzell, she would smile and say, "Never heard of him." Just go along with her day. Yeah.
Lauren cousins are Frizzells.
Huh?
Cousins are Frizzells. When it's very any kind of a coming in, nothing to do with it.
Oh, I like that car.
That was a city hall.
Oh?
Jail.
Alright, I'm inside the house.
Everybody's getting lazy, but
That's what I was texting. Yeah.
I've never seen this store before. Yeah. The piano's gone. Oh, man.
Oh, it's fantastic. If you get a chance, great place to stop. Try it.
I was like, I didn't know what that Okay, look. Wait a second.
Romans.
we deliver.
I guess they do, don't they? They have trucks.
What the heck? The only time you call them, you them say you making me. So we got to hold it down there and sit there and right?
Yeah, you like to walk.
Put your own face on that one too.
Leave my face
Yeah.
alone.
Put your face on.
Leave my face alone. Keep away from me. My phone. Your face, my phone. Oh. I know what you were doing. Oh, it's sore.
What would you do if you were on this truck? They were not messed up by your place. And then finally you just wonder why you see all them things. What do they call them?
Orbs. Yeah, I know.
Looks like the original railroad and everything.
This tour. You're trying to get through this tour. I don't know, this ain't easy.
Right up where it's
Oh, can't breathe. I need a drink. That's the top. It helps with breathing.
I told you you should go on that hill. Why was I going to go ahead of you?
Well, that's why I came up here, because I would end up at the back. This is a historical building. Yeah. That's the back of it. All right. I need a drink. Don't put your hands all over the outfit. Hold it.
Right? Actually, if anything, it's facing the opposite way.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, this location might look a little bit familiar. The reason is you're in the back of the building that you first came into. This is the Historical Society. Just a little bit about this. In 1818, the first school was actually built in this location on the right-hand side. It was a small log cabin. Mr. John Potts, who was the founder of the town, actually gave up this land within his will. His son Benjamin put up quite a fight because he wanted the land only to be used as a burial ground, but yet the will stated that it should be used for religious purposes and as a school as well. Well, the Pottsville School Board actually went to the higher courts. Sure enough, they won. The school was put here. So we had the school right here. Everything else that you see right here was a cemetery. It was actually known as the Presbyterian Cemetery. Now, there was a second addition made later on. The building up in front of us was actually started in 1863, completed in 1865. And this building was used into the 1980s until John X. Clark came along. But the interesting thing is, we had cemetery all along here. Now, unfortunately, the cemetery was quite unkept. That's the best way to say it. John Potts and his wife were both buried here. Because the cemetery was in such rough shape, there was grass up to the knees. It's described as vermin that would be running around. If you notice, we're on a bit of a hill. When the rains would come, because some people were buried so shallow, the coffins were actually exposed. Sure enough, skulls, arms, those kind of things were seen within this area. School children right there. Probably not enough guidance counselors in the world to take care of that situation. Well, sure enough, the city came in and said, absolutely not, we need to relocate people. There were around 500 people. The reason I say the word around is because we don't know if they were all dug up. We don't know if they were all exhumed. Most of the remains were taken to a location known as the Presbyterian Cemetery out in that direction. John Potts and his wife Maria were actually put in the Charles Baber Cemetery, not far from here. Now, the interesting thing is, it's been stated since about the 1860s that a spirit roams the Charles Baber Cemetery. It's stated as a long, white spirit, misty in formation that walks along the main road and then back. And many people, since the 1860s, have gone there trying to see it. In fact, 2 people in a newspaper report went with coal lamps. They noticed the figure coming towards them. Just as the figure approached, both coal lamps went out at the same time. Both men ran out of the cemetery. So, if you have nothing to do after our tour, I suggest you take a ride up there. Onto the courthouse.
In 1980, they changed the job.
1980s. Oh boy. Keep my water close. Keep my water close. I should have went that way. That probably would have been easier for me. I didn't think about it.
I believe you did. Yeah, probably what?
How far up is it going? Oh, jeez. Whew. It's getting to me. No. Give me a sec.
Oh.
Whew.
Push yourself. All right.
Hold on.
It's a big hit.
That's
Push
why.
you.
That's why I went from the front, because I knew I would end up in the back.
Just help take some weight off of you.
I still can't breathe.
Don't push.
Hey, look, there's 61. I'll be fine.
Huh?
I'll catch my breath when I get up there.
Yeah, but this is even bigger than the hill up to your house, and you stop halfway.
I know.
We're almost there. You all right?
Now, you may notice a theme going on with this. Once again, we are currently standing on what was once a cemetery. Again, the cemetery was a little unkept. In fact, it was so bad that in 1909, the Board of Health came in. They realized that residents of Pottsville were getting ill. They traced it back to this location. This was known as the Welsh Cemetery. There were a bunch of people that were buried here, and when the Board of Health came up, they were horrified by what they found. They found multiple graves that had 3 to 4 people within one casket buried. They also found many caskets that were only about a foot or 2 deep. They found one gentleman. Horrible. There was a little water area here. The coffin was actually put in the water area, weighed down with stones so it would sink. Well, unfortunately, it started to float back up, so they needed to add more stones. Upon seeing this, instantly they said that bodies needed to be exhumed, and they were moved to the Welsh Cemetery within town. By far the worst example. The reason they found out there were such deplorable conditions, they found dogs that were digging up fresh corpses and actually taking some of the body parts because they were so not the nicest thing. Now, if you look to the left, this is our Pottsville courthouse. This was not the first county seat. It was actually located in Warwicksburg. If you look to the right, we have the Pottsville prison. Now, with the courthouse, a very famous trial that took place here is known as the Ringtown Witch. What happened was there was a woman by the name of Susan Mummy. She lived on the outskirts of Ringtown, a town not far from here. There was a man, backtrack. Susan was tending to a gentleman by the name of Jacob. He was the boyfriend of her daughter. She was putting some ointment on his foot. It was late at night, St. Patrick's Day, 1934. Out of nowhere, a shotgun blast actually went right through the lamp, complete darkness. Well, Susan's daughter and Jacob fell to the floor, horrified to move. They refused to move until the next morning. When the light finally came about, horrified, they saw her mother lying in a pool of blood. The shot had gone directly through the lamp, through her chest, and killed her almost instantly. Well, there was a huge manhunt that ensued. They went into a location known as Shenandoah, which is not far from Ringtown. Yes. And they found a gentleman by the name of Albert Shinsky. The police officer went up to Albert. He started to question him because his car had been seen at the farm. Albert looked at the police officer, smiled, and said, "Yep, I did it." So they brought him right here. He was brought into the courthouse. He was questioned by the judge, and he told a tale you would not believe. He claimed that at the age of 15, he had been going across Susan's farm, jumped the gate, opened it by accident, and let some cows out. Susan, upon seeing this, ran over, pointed her crinkly finger at him, and said, "I will get you." And from that day, for the next 9 years, he believed that a hex was put on him by Susan. Now, neighbors actually, added to this because they claimed that Susan had predicted the death of her husband several years before. She told her husband not to go to work. He went to work and he was blown to bits that day. When they came here and they started talking about the experience, Albert claimed black cat with piercing green eyes would show up at his house within the window and claw Bella. Then over time, somehow the cat got into the house. It would actually sit on top of Albert's chest, start laughing in a maniacal voice, and changing the Susan's face. Things were so bad for Albert, he actually went to a powwow doctor, German powwow doctor, mind you, and started bloodletting, trying to let the curse out. Eventually, over time, he decided the only way to take care of the curse was to shoot Susan. He did that. That actually took place right here. One of the claims is, within this courthouse, there is a spirit that walks the halls. I've heard it from lawyers and even past judges, known as Patches. Now, Patches is affectionately known as one of the Molly Maguire spirits. But the interesting thing is, the Molly Maguire trials were not actually in this courthouse. They were directly behind it. It was the first courthouse. This was built later on. So it's claimed that the spirits relocated. Now, the interesting thing with our jail, the jail was actually built in 1851. There were 24 cells, and it was modeled after Eastern State Penitentiary in Philadelphia. It cost about $70,000 to our jail. Within this jail, there have been 15 executions overall. And the interesting thing is, there were 2 executions that were tried in Orangeburg that did not go too well. The first execution that was tried within this county was for the man by the name of Zimmerman. Zimmerman was found guilty of killing his daughter. And the manner in which he killed his daughter, he won't exactly get Father of the Year. What happened was she was not bringing his food to him more quickly. He took an axe, took care of his daughter. He was set to go to the gallows and be hung, but the day before, a fellow inmate took a board, beat him to death in jail. The worst thing that can happen. The second one that was taking place in Orangeburg was Jimmy Riggs. Jimmy Riggs was found guilty of shooting a man in front of his wife, and he said that it was self-defense. Now, Jimmy, leading up to his execution, tried to escape. He also tried to starve himself to death, but was unsuccessful. They brought him out to the gallows, hung him up, and he hung. Might have to move over a little bit. Sorry about that. Jimmy hung on the gallows for approximately 33 minutes. Upon putting Jimmy down, they instantly ushered him back into the jail, hooked him up to a battery, tried to resuscitate him to see if it would be successful. They were unsuccessful. His muscles just flailed about. Now, the very first execution that took place here was a man by the name of Joe Brown. He was killed in, I use my cheat sheet, I apologize, 1876. Joe was killed. Joe was hung for a murder. The most infamous hangings ever are the Molly Maguires. Now, overall, there were 9 Molly Maguires. 6 were hung on a day called the Day of the Rope, or Black Thursday, June 21st, 1877. It was said the night before the hangings, tons of miners and their families actually came out, sat outside the jail in silent vigil because they felt so badly for the miners. Now, the reason they say Patches is walking around the courthouse is because many historians and legal analysts claim that the Molly Maguires did not get a fair trial. I can tell you right now, I've been studying about the Molly Maguires since I've been about 13 years old. It's not a black and white story. There's many shades of gray within there, so I want to make that certain. However, some of the claims are the jury members for the Molly Maguires, there were no Irish on the jury, and also they had some German people on the jury that are said to hardly understand English. Yet they were found guilty.
To add on to this, the reason why there was so much representation was because back then the Irish were put into the same category as African Americans. They were that badly treated. They were looked on as a race different from the Anglo Americans.
Absolutely, you're right, Zach. Now, with our prison, like I said, June 21st, 1877, 6 Mollies were brought out. 2 at a time, they were hung from the gallows. There were 3 more Mollies after that. The most infamous, Blackjack Kehoe, who was said to be the leader of the Mollies. He was hung in December of 1878. The last execution that took place in here was Joe Christock, 1911. Now, the interesting thing about Christock is the papers would come and interview him, and he said he definitely would have killed more people if he had the opportunity. As he was being led to the gallows, he was shaking the hands of all the guards that were with him the whole time he was here, and he was hung. Some very odd things have been taking place in this prison. Now, one account in the Miners' Journal was there was a man by the name of George Lynch who was convicted of murdering his wife in 1901. George was all set to go to the gallows, yet he claimed that the spirit of his wife started to visit him and torment him from the other side. She said, "Wait until I get a hold of you, Joe. George, I'm waiting for you." Well, what George did was he had no other option. In his mind, he ripped off a part of his quilt, put it around his neck, hung himself within the cell. It's claimed within there, black shadow figures are seen walking through. They have heard the sound of gallows being let go, the trapdoors going. When they look out the windows, they'll see a silhouette of a black figure of a person hanging there. It was so bad that a series of prisoners actually signed a petition to be moved to a different location within the jail. Former prison guards have told me they go nowhere near the jail basement, because there were 6 dungeons kept within there, and they have seen some really weird things. Shadow figures going throughout, voices being said within.
Is that still operational?
Yes, it is. Yeah, there's currently 270. A real quick one. If you look across the street, across 61, you'll see a series of houses. There's a location there known as North George Street. There was a kid by the name of George Simon. George Simon loved money, and his parents were all too willing to give it to George. What they would do is he would go into his mom's purse, take a couple pennies and dimes. When he was about 13 years old, he would go into bank and try to get money. When he was in high school, eventually he practically bankrupted the family. Well, George would have none of this. He needed money. So what's the next source of money? Life insurance. He went into the home one evening. His mother was crocheting, walked up behind her with a pistol, shot her in the head. Actually dragged her body upstairs to his bedroom where he had a small closet, pushed the body into the closet, poured disinfectants and preservatives over it, and then screwed it shut in hopes that Dad would not find out. His father came home that evening and asked me, "Where's your mother?" "Dad, she went to Mom." I said, "She'll be back in a few days. She's visiting relatives." His father believed him. Over the next couple nights, George would actually sneak into his parents' bedroom where his father lay, sound asleep, with an axe in hand, ready to put the axe through his head. His plan was to kill his father and then burn down the house for the insurance money. George couldn't do it. So what he did was he actually left, went to his girlfriend's house here in Pottsville. Well, sure enough, father went upstairs, noticed the door being screwed in, called the police. Police came in, burst it open, found his mother. There was a huge hunt for George. They finally found him at the girlfriend's house. He wrote 12 pages of what I'm telling you right now. And as the police officers came out to arrest him, he shot himself in the head. Now, the interesting thing is with the home, the father would not stay. Don't blame him. But there were very odd occurrences when people would come in to buy the house. They would claim they would hear a boom, boom, boom going up the stairs. People claim it's George dragging up his mom's lifeless body. In addition to that, they would put coins out to see if they could tempt George. Sure enough, some of the coins would disappear. After several years, the house would not sell, not surprisingly, so they demolished it.
Oh, man, this is my house. I was going to ask the address. What do they change that? Just to find out if it was my house or not. That was a good ending. I was thinking, is that my house? And I was picturing everything. I feel scared to run around, trust me. That's what we felt scared to run around.
What did you want to know?
Uh-huh.
What did you want to know?
I just we did a Tuesday prison tour. We walk around here one day. You don't stop. You don't stop sign.
Where did I have like a Nicolai?
Me, we watched the movie. Yeah. I was into them too. I was reading a lot about them, watching a lot about them. Yeah. Yeah, I have a paper conversation.
Just a little history side fact. This is the location of the original England brewery.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It was there from 1829 until 1831 and then burned down.
Oh,
So
wow.
it's currently used as city hall.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, I was telling him, I always felt when spirits are around him. My daughter would see him all the time.
Really?
And she wouldn't tell me half the time until later she would tell me.
Yeah.
She would scare me.
That's understandable.
And they would move things and put them back. And I told him that's what happened with the card I had. He was disappearing. The whole day I put it back, it was right back there in my pillow where I left it.
That's wild.
Yeah. I don't know. I think it's a barn restaurant.
Hey, folks, if you like to go out in this area,
Yeah. Barn restaurant. Don't fall in there.
okay, ladies and gentlemen, if you look right behind us, this is the Park Hotel. Next to it is the Grace. Now, the interesting thing is there's been a tavern on this location since 1828. The first tavern was called the Buckwalter Inn. After that, the Northwestern Hotel was built. That stayed up until 1871, burned down. Then they built the Park Hotel. It's been here since 1880. The interesting thing is with the Greystone, it's said to be a speakeasy. Prohibition was taking place. Plus, it's a wonderful establishment. Now, the interesting thing is with the Park Hotel, this is home of the infamous chef. What happened was there was a gentleman by the name of George Deese. George Deese was a chef by trade, but unfortunately, George could not keep a job. And the main reason was he had a little trouble with the alcohol. He would get fired from place to place. George was employed here for about 6 months, and it just seemed like a hit rock bottom. You know, unfortunately for George, he went up to his room, which was on the 3rd floor. He sat down with a paper and pencil and started writing out a will, giving out whatever items he still had. He had $2.85, gave it to one person that was a friend, the other was a maid within the hotel. After a couple of minutes, he closed the door, walked over, took out a pistol, and decided now was the time. Decided to commit suicide. He did it in a very unconventional way, put it into his stomach and fired. Now, the waitress who was here heard the ruckus, ran up to George's room, was just about to knock, and she heard a second shot. She called the authorities, they ran up. Sure enough, they found George on the floor, lying in a pool of blood. And according to the Miner's Journal, in the wall, they found a bullet hole that had a halo of blood and brain matter all around. Now, it was very upsetting to everyone. They tried to find family. They finally found him in upstate New York. He was buried for a while at the Schuylkill Haven Holmes house, exhumed, brought back to his family. The chef has not left the Park Hotel. What people have noticed is they get very sad feelings with it, especially within the hotel itself. In the Greystone, patrons have said that they feel like a person sitting next to them, but when they look, no one's there. That room in particular has had a lot of weird experiences. Shadow people are said to walk around, thought to be the chef. The person who actually owns it for a while, when his wife were in that room, they woke up one night and they saw a person standing there. It was also ice cold. They refused to stay in that room. So the spirit of George is still hanging out in the Park Hotel.
I have a question. What 100 block is that at George Street?
North George Street? 108. 108 North George.
Okay. It's just an empty lot next to it.
Yeah.
108, you get a walk up there. 108, you get a walk up there.
Got your water again. Oh, man. Thank you so much.
Oh, would you do it that way? Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
They were down.
Huh?